everyone. My name is Sam, and I'm the North Jersey organizer with Food and Water Watch. Thank you so much for joining our town hall this evening regarding water privatization in South Orange, which is on the ballot this November for voters to decide whether or not to sell their water system to NJ American Water or to keep it publicly owned. We've got a lot of great presenters lined up for this evening, including my colleague Mary Grant from Food and Water Watch, Bill Ferguson from Keep Water Affordable, and Peggy Gallows from the New Jersey Association of Environmental Authorities. This is a recording, of course, so we say you couldn't join us live, but if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. My email is right here, sdefalco@fwwatch.org, and we'll get back to you with an answer to your question. Thank you so much. And I'll pass things over to my colleague, Mary Grant.
Thanks, Sam, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I'm going to give an overview of privatization, kind of dive into a little bit about what's at stake on the ballot in South Orange. And the next slide, just sometimes when I talk about water privatization, some people are actually shocked, outside of New Jersey usually, because most people are unaware that private water utilities even exist in this country. The vast majority of people in the United States have publicly owned water. Nationally, 87% of people who are on a water system, who don't have a household well, receive service from a publicly owned system, usually their local government. And on the next slide, I have a list of reasons why public ownership prevails nationally, from control of decision-making and investments to lower costs and better regional coordination. I want to just take a minute to step back briefly because historically, many of our nation's water systems, from New York City to San Francisco, were actually privately controlled. But they're not today because it was a disaster. For example, in New York City, the predecessor of the bank, JP Morgan Chase, used to control the water supply. The city took it over in the 1800s after a cholera epidemic killed 3,500 people, and huge fires caused massive property destruction. The company was blamed because it refused to extend water service to low-income areas of the city where it didn't think it could make money. In the 1800s through the early 1900s, thousands of cities took control of their water from private entities to improve water quality, lower costs, and provide equitable service. For some reason, that wave of municipalization didn't really hit New Jersey as hard as it hit other places. But overall, public water led to better access and improved water quality. It helped prevent the spread of disease. Local governments extended lines to low-income tenement areas, to Black communities in particular, that had been historically excluded from service by private companies. One analysis found that public ownership of water cut typhoid rates in Black communities in the South by as much as 42%. But there are big regional differences. On the next slide, you can see that New Jersey is an outlier. Already in New Jersey, nearly 40% of people get their water from a privately owned water system. Most of these privately owned systems, again, have always been private. So it's not like there was this big wave of privatization. These are typically just systems that have always been private. And on the next slide, you can see I'm like diving in a little bit more into drinking water system ownership in New Jersey. The green systems are public. American Water is in orange. And on this map, we've also highlighted 6 communities considering privatization right now, including South Orange. So what's at stake? On the next slide, you'll see that the heart of the issue is really about local control. Who controls the system? Who makes those big decisions? What investments are prioritized? Where lines are replaced first? How do we charge for service? It's about accountability and transparency in those decisions. With public control, you can go to the village's council chambers, you can go email the mayor, you can talk to the mayor. But with private control, you're cut out. You can't just walk into a corporate boardroom. You can't Oprah the CEO of American Water. And on the next slide, you'll see that rates also tend to be higher with private water. On average, among large systems, private utilities charge 59% more than local governments charge for the same amount of water. And on the next slide, there was an analysis by Cornell University looking at that data, and they found that private ownership is the single biggest factor associated with higher rates, more than drought or aging infrastructure. And on the next slide are a list of some of the corporate policies. So the big companies are really aggressive right now, particularly in New Jersey, where they have successfully passed a lot of these friendly laws and regulations. A big one is surcharges. You can see a chart there from American Water's latest investor presentation. The company expects to recover 45% of all of its investments through these surcharges over the next 4 years. You can also be on the lookout for consolidated rate setting between drinking water and wastewater services. The water system's on the ballot today, but if you sell it to American Water in the future, you might end up having to pay the sewer costs of another another community because the companies are seeking in states across the country to consolidate drinking water and wastewater, so that drinking water customers end up paying the cost of their acquisition spree for sewer systems. So New Jersey does not allow this yet, but we will anticipate they will seek to do it, especially as major sewer deals continue to pass, like the one in Gloucester right now on the ballot this November. And notably, companies have supported legislation to remove the referendum requirement before a sale, but fortunately for South Orange, your mayor has decided to let voters have a say. So on the next slide, this November, South Orange Village voters will decide whether or not to sell your water system, your water distribution system, to New Jersey American Water. This should be considered a permanent decision. American Water does not kindly allow cities to buy back their water systems after privatization. Many communities nationally have gone to court, and it's been a really long, expensive, intense court battle for them to fight for the right to own their water system again. So on the next slide, so just for some background, why is this on the ballot? There is one notable factor. The company, American Water, is no longer willing to operate the publicly owned system. So on January 1st, 2017, American Water began operating the publicly owned South Orange water system under a 10-year contract and providing bulk water to the village under a 30-year water purchase deal. By this time, the company had already begun winding down its contract operations business. And the next year in 2018, the company officially exited the contract operations business, selling the bulk of its contracts to Veolia, the world's biggest water privatization company. By then, according to an industry publication, the company had, quote, all but given up competing for new municipal contracts, end quote. American Water retained just 4 contracts, which were near utilities that it already owned. This includes South Orange. So you're one of the 4. So on the next slide, so what is American Water? Let's back up a little bit. It's the largest US-based investor-owned utility. It serves 3.5 million customers nationally and generates about $4 billion in operating revenue last year. And it made nearly $1 billion in profit for its stockholders. It makes an average of more than $1,000 in revenue per regulated customer, and it spends millions on political contributions and executive compensation. On the next slide, about a quarter of that revenue nationally, about a quarter of it, $1 billion a year after this latest rate case, is from New Jersey. How does the company make money? This is important to think about, to talk about. The how of its profit. We know the why. It's a business. It needs to make money for its owners. But how does it do that? The company makes money buying up and investing in systems like South Orange, adding them to its rate base or its investment base, a $5 billion investment base in New Jersey. About 55% of that is called its equity ownership. The rest is debt. In its latest rate case, the company was allowed to earn a 9.6% rate of return on that equity stake. That's its profit. So based on the latest BPU order, I calculate that it will make more than $250 million in profit from New Jersey customers a year. On top of that, it's allowed to recover what are called gross up costs for income taxes, uncollectible expenses, and BPU and rate council assessments. So given that, it should not be surprising. On the next slide, you'll see that even though South Orange buys its water from the company and has hired the company to operate its system, households in the village pay substantially lower rates than direct customers of the utility right now. The company charges between 20 to nearly 40% higher rates depending on your usage. Lower water using households see bigger savings with public ownership right now, which is important because they tend to be lower income households. There are various rate projections from the village about what will happen if you don't sell. So my word of caution on that is just take those with a heady dose of salt. Bill will go into more of that next. The village budget documents indicate that the recent rate increases that you've experienced recently were due to American Water's rising costs. So instead of ceding all that control over to the company, can you find a better or cheaper water supplier? So on the next slide, So Peggy will talk more about alternatives after Bill, but I want to show you that South Orange is actually surrounded by other public water systems. Again, the green is public, orange is American Water. So in addition, your current water supplier, New Jersey American Water, also buys a portion of the water that it sells you from other public suppliers, including Newark. The list of where it buys some of its water is on that screen. So on the next slide, so has the village really done its due diligence about alternatives to privatization? Notably, American Water in particular will need to update its treatment systems to address PFOA over the next 5 years when the new federal standard kicks in. Other water suppliers will too, of course, right? Like this is a big issue. New Jersey was hit especially hard by PFAS because of all the industry in the state. Um, but according to this year's water quality reports, at least, both Newark and the North Jersey District Water Supply Commission have PFOA levels that are lower than your water than in your water today from New Jersey American Water, your water supplier. So could you find a safe, less expensive water supplier? That's the question of the hour. But one thing is certain, you give up your choice to look for one if you decide to sell your distribution system. So thanks everyone for listening. I'll turn it over to Bill now to tell you what it's like to sell out to Big Water and to really dive into those finances.
Okay, thank you. Let's go on to the next chart. I live in southeastern Pennsylvania in a township called New Garden. Our sewer system was purchased in 2020 by Aqua, yeah, under this fair market value uh, system. We didn't know what was happening at the time, but then they filed for a rate increase and boom, our rates doubled. As a result, two neighbors and I have formed Keep Water Affordable to help others avoid this fate. If you go to the next chart, I want to sort of re-emphasize something Mary said about water and sewer being really logical services for a municipality. Water and sewer are essential and universal needs, and population density really mandates collective systems. They can be public, they can be private, but the technology for supplying all this is well known and widely practiced. It is a big advantage for the service to be supplied at cost. This type of service represents the very essence of how a local government serves its citizens. And the next chart shows the difference here. On the left-hand side of this is the current revenue structure for Aqua, Pennsylvania. And you saw a similar chart that Mary had. It looks very different, but the numbers are almost identical. She showed an after-tax profit and taxes. I show a pre-tax profit, and they're almost exactly identical. I separate out operating cost and depreciation, and she lumped those together. And when you sort all that out, it's the same thing. These companies all look alike. But the big factor there is that big profit slice on the left. 44 cents of every dollar I pay Aqua for sewer service goes to their profit. That blows my mind, but that's the way it is. The chart on the right is my estimate of a hypothetical Aqua as a nonprofit. You get rid of that profit slice, you get rid of the depreciation, debt service and interest are different, but overall you can see that the for-profit costs twice as much as the nonprofit. And that profit piece is the major driver, and it's all paid for by the customer. So going to the next chart, I want to sort of switch here a little bit and talk about the techniques Big Water uses for privatization. We have studied, we meaning Keep Water Affordable, have studied a number of privatizations in Pennsylvania, and key patterns emerge. We call it the playbook. The playbook's thing is stuff like the municipality should not be in the water business. Leave it to us pros. And then there's oh geez, expensive repairs are needed. Your township or your municipality can't afford it. or it's going to take a big rate increase to pay for it. And then there's a grain of truth covering a huge deception that big water can do it cheaper. And that grain of truth is maybe their operating costs have a bit of advantage, but they don't tell you about the profit and depreciation that are many multiples of their operating savings. And then there's often some sort of a rate cap plan that they tout. And does any of that sound familiar? Going through some of the South Orange stuff, I saw some things that rang true to me. So let's go to the South Orange situation. South Orange is really not in the water business with the American relationship, doing all of the supply and all of the operating. And as Mary indicated, the American wants out. And, from what I can see, it looks like South Orange doesn't want to have to deal with the transition to somebody else or whatever. Let's just sell it. I have gone through the task force study based on our experience and have some questions, at least in my mind. I would suggest that there's a number of parallels here to these playbook items. We'll ask the question, is it different this time? I'll raise the questions, you get to decide. But keep in mind, you only get to make this decision once. You really want to be sure you get it right, because as Mary said, you don't unsell the system. So let's go to the next chart. One of the things that was really unclear to me is what water is paid for here. Is it the water delivered by American to the village? Is it the water metered out to a customers? There's appeared to be a pretty big leakage issue, maybe as much as 45% of the water not getting to customers. That blows my mind. And then I see that there's a 2 million gallon minimum per day. Is that a take or pay situation? It's important because the data indicates the use is only about 1.4 million gallons per day. I must confess, I do not understand all of this. I talked this afternoon with a gentleman here on this phone call. He helped me a little bit, but you really need to understand what you're paying for and how much you're paying. I don't have an answer here, but I can tell you, I can see that it's important. And another thing in the township stuff, or in the task force stuff, excuse me, was that the South Orange is going ahead without seeking alternate O&M bids. I don't see how you can make a decision to sell or not sell or find a different contractor without doing that. That seems to be integral to a normal decision to sell. So you don't really have anything to compare to. Next slide. And this was one that catches me with New Garden. There's some huge parallels here. When New Garden wanted to sell its system, they told us that a $12 million investment was required and a 78% rate increase would be required to pay for it. And that was the reason to sell, and Aqua made some other 10-year rate claim payment or claims. And ultimately, that was the justification for selling. The investment and the rate increase were all lies. It turns out that just before the sale, New Garden had done some studies on their system that said it was in good shape, no particular remediation needed. And subsequently, after the sale, we know what Aqua has put into it. Going through the numbers, and it's on our website, our Keep Water Affordable website, we would still be on our 2014 rates had we not decided to sell. So, you know, Is it different this time? Does South Orange really need $50 million and a 75% rate increase? I honestly don't know the answer to that, but I'll tell you, you want to be sure of it and have a lot of confidence in the people that are telling you that. One of the things that as an engineer, I can pretty well predict will apply is the 80-20 rule. That means that 20% of the cost, say $10 million, would do 80% of the benefit. Uh, it, and that's what that's saying is you want to approach a big investment like that on a step-by-step basis. Uh, that's just the way things work. Another thing, and Peggy's going to talk about this, Mary mentioned it a little bit, was regionalization considered. That is important for two reasons. One, that regionalization gives you economy of scale, a significant economy of scale, and it gives you competency of the system. You can better afford very knowledgeable people. So, that's a very important consideration. Finally, the task force reported that 10 to 12 people required for an in-house solution. Quite honestly, that boggles my mind for a fairly simple system like this. All you folks have there is a piping system. That ought to be examined by knowledgeable people, or let's say this way, you need to be very comfortable with that estimate because it's a big driver in the selling decision. Finally, on the next page, another thing that popped up again and again and again was the focus on a 9,000 gallon per month average use, and that was talked about as being an important number. If you know about water systems, there's no such thing as an average user. The bar chart on the left is an actual plot of New Garden's water customers. Each bar represents an increment of 1,000 gallons per quarter. So as you go down the chart, each bar is the next 1,000 gallons per month higher. The height of the bar is the number of customers at that consumption level. And you get a very normal distribution with a long tail on it. So is there a average or normal customer in there? Not really. The right side of that chart really is a different way of expressing how different customers will be impacted. And I show various uses in terms of how many thousand gallons per month in your annual cost and how that compares with American in New Jersey. And you're looking at 15 to 25% more expensive than American at low usage. And if you get up into real high usage, American would be a little bit cheaper. So this is residential customers. You also need to do that for commercial and industrial. And, so people will really understand what the impacts on them will be. So I'll conclude with, I don't know that these are terribly significant issues, but you only get one shot at this. These are things that you really ought to feel comfortable about, that you fully understand and know how you're voting when you get in the voting booth. So thank you for your attention, and if there's any questions at the end, I'd be happy to discuss them. We'll now pass it over to Peggy.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here with Mary and Bill and the rest of the gang here. Really, the points that Bill and Mary have already made, I'm going to repeat to some extent and just offer a little bit more detail in some of those areas. So can you go to the next slide, please? And the big message, and Bill has talked about this, is public water systems have choices. And perhaps because South Orange has been operated by New Jersey American for quite a while. You don't have some of the contacts you might have had otherwise, contacts in other systems, and may not be aware of some of the choices that you have. So I want to talk about explorations of options for the future, and how they should be robust and how they can be robust. Public systems should be taking advantage of support and consulting services that are available. And again, the point that has been made, which is so important, is that you get really one shot at this, and the consequences are far-reaching. Can we go to the next slide, please? So one of the things that, and again, this has been raised, that a lot of these transactions, there are not really, really robust exploration of all the options. We see this again and again. Now, I congratulate South Orange for having the task force and doing the work that it did do, but I think, as may be clear by now, there's been a lot more that could have been done. And so another really important point to realize here is that a lot of New Jersey is already regionalized. There are authorities and other agencies that provide regional wastewater treatment and drinking water. You have Passaic Valley Water Commission, Passaic Valley Sewerage Commission. You have regional sewage authorities, and you have towns that assist one another both with bulk water purchasing and selling, or other needs. And there are also government systems that are actively engaged in contractual relationships with other systems to provide services. Plainfield Area Regional Sewage Authority assists with stormwater management of some of its member towns, but it's a separate service. North Bergen Utilities Authority, and I think Northwest Bergen are also involved in operations and doing work with other government systems. Atlantic County Utilities Authority, I think on its solid waste side, actually does some shares, and they're always helping their individual member towns in many ways. And Manasquan River Regional Authority operates the Holmdel water sewer system, collection system. So these are existing relationships, and these can be built upon. So let's go. Let's see. So I want to talk a little bit on the next slide about alternatives to in-house operation. And in-house, I mean the running it, the town running it itself. So the point was made earlier that there's a lot more competition in the operations contracting area, and yes, and so what that tells you is that there are a lot of other options in terms of operating the system. Maybe New Jersey American does not want to be in that business anymore, but there are other entities that are providing these kinds of services. You can get public systems to come and help you run your system. And you can also hire a couple of ones that I've got listed there: DeBlock Environmental, Lyons Environmental, Natural Systems Utilities is another one that does contract operations for systems. So when Bill was talking about some of the sort of due diligence of looking to see what kinds of options there are, actually soliciting bids from some of these companies, or reaching out to neighbors and seeing what the options are, is another good and robust way of really, really exploring all the options. And the other thing is that these arrangements can be created in, I like to call it, an entrepreneurial manner. These people that are in the water sector talk to each other all the time. The inquiries can be made to other folks in the sector, to people running other systems. There can be postings, and people can reach out through email and find out whether there are any systems that are interested in partnering. Sometimes somebody hears about an opportunity and passes it along. So There isn't necessarily one way to do this. And I think, for example, it would be nice if the state could help more in these cases, help municipalities and give them sort of some kind of plan or guidance in how they could actually do this. And there is some of that, but I don't think there's enough. The next slide, please. So I just wanted to talk about some of the resources that are available that are free or very low cost. The Department of Community Affairs runs what it calls a local assistance bureau. That local assistance bureau has expertise in water and sewer as well. They're just a management consulting service for municipalities. The USDA, through the New Jersey Water Association, has a circuit rider program, and they will provide systems with assistance on their consumer confidence reports, line location, planning source water, doing drone inspections. I don't remember what SOC waivers means offhand. Funding consultation, they can help with, applications, engineering, lead and copper rule compliance, wellhead protection, community outreach, and lots of other things. And there's also in that same area with rural water, very small water system program that serves 1,000 or fewer customers. And again, there's technical assistance, engineering, planning, and design. Jersey Waterworks maintains a funding tracking list, and that might be worth taking a look at. And then we have what we call a peer-to-peer program. It's really just a fancy name for what we've always done and continue to do, is that public systems help other public systems. They help informally, they help on an ongoing basis, they help with equipment, they help with personnel, they help with working through problems, understanding personnel matters or contracting matters. So there are a lot of ways that public systems help one another. And in fact, there was a graduate student at Michigan State University who was actually working on a study where he was trying to quantify or create a value, make valuation for these informal arrangements between public systems, because they do have a monetary value. It's just that nobody, it's not necessarily figured out. So, so the peer-to-peer program that we have, which is I have the website up there, is really just a list of utilities that are willing to offer help. So the next slide. And I think this is kind of obvious, but staying public does not mean the rates will never rise. Some of the concerns that are raised within the context of these sales, well, we have a lot of costs that are looming. We have lead service lines, we have PFAS rule compliance. We have these things that are coming, and we have to take care of them. If you take care of it through the lowest cost approach, it's if the project costs less to do, then it's going to cost the customer less. So so there will still be expenses, and there will still have to be rate increases, but you do get to be in the driver's seat if you keep the system. You're going to be ensuring the service is delivered transparently and as cost effectively as possible. And I'm going to reiterate the point about this being such an important decision with such far-reaching consequences. And one of the things that I think a lot about is that we are heading into, if we're not there already, an era where water is going to be more precious than oil. And it seems to me that controlling your water and protecting it from speculation or from counterproductive policies is really important. You're a much better position to do that if you own the asset. So that's all I have. I appreciate your attention, and I guess I'll go back to Sam.
Thanks so much, Peggy. And Yeah, thank you to all of our presenters for all this information. I think a couple people have joined since the beginning, so I'll just reintroduce myself. My name is Sam DeFalco, and I'm an organizer with Food and Water Watch, and we're an organization that's been operating in New Jersey for over 15 years and nationwide for almost 20. And one of our key issues that we focus on and our values is keeping water publicly owned because we believe water is a human right. And with that comes the need for democratic control of water systems. Like Peggy said, it's our most precious resource. I'll put a little more about us in the chat if you're not familiar with this organization. Um, and yeah, I wanted to share some opportunities to get involved. Of course, South Orange residents will vote in this upcoming election on whether or not to authorize a sale of the water utility to NJ American Water. Of course, we, for all the reasons that were discussed earlier in this call, oppose this sale and want to encourage residents to vote no. There are many other options that will not permanently give up control of the utility. And we would love your help in helping us connect with residents to make sure everyone knows that this issue is on the ballot this November so they can make an informed vote. So um, two two ways that you can actually more than two ways that you can get involved. Our first and definitely most critical need right now is to have people help us make phone calls. We're trying to reach voters in South Orange to make sure everyone is informed about this issue. So if you're available and interested in helping us phone bank, it's very easy. We have a great list of voters that we're calling. And we gather together on Zoom like we're doing right now and make calls using a calling tool that we set up so no one sees your phone number. You use sort of a computer software to make the calls. And yeah, it's a great way to get connected with neighbors in South Orange and talk about this issue. So if you're interested in phone banking and can spare 2 hours or an hour in the next less than 3 weeks before the election, please sign up to do so in the link I just put in the chat. And then if you can't phone bank or it's really not your thing, there are other ways you can be involved too. We have sort of a multi-purpose volunteer form I just put in the chat with different ways you can be involved. Whether that's, yeah, calling residents. If you can't phone bank at specific times but can call on your own time, that's great too. You can sign up for that. If you're able to distribute flyers to your neighbors or at a community event, we can provide flyers. If you're able to share information about this with your networks, we can get you some template emails and materials to share. Same for social media. And on election day, we're hoping to be out there visible with this issue near polling sites, outside of the electioneering restriction zone. And potentially we'll do some flyering and talking to voters at the South Orange train station during rush hour on election day. So if you are interested and can spare some time to get involved with any of this, please sign up. We would love to work together to make sure that this water system remains in the public's hands. And at this point, we can open it up for Q&A. So I know there's some questions in the chat already. Matt, I think if you want to just take the slides down, thank you. Yeah, so just to start, there is a question about regionalization, about whether regional agreement requires communities be contiguous. Do any of our panelists have an answer for that?
Well, I think Ben answered that to some extent, and I added to it.
Oh, great.
The systems don't need to be contiguous. Of course, it depends on the nature of what they're trying to do. If they're trying to sell water to one another, if one's selling water, obviously there has to be a hydrological connection. But if it's an operations contract, no, they don't have to be contiguous. The system that is providing the service is like any other company that's coming in and operating the system. and the convenience or how close they are may be an issue in terms of coverage, but that's part of the way you evaluate the different service providers and can be part of that negotiation.
Yeah, I was talking to a trustee, one of the trustees that voted no a couple nights ago, and he was suggesting we approach Livingston, see maybe if they're interested in helping run our system or running our system. In fact, our village administrator, our former village administrator, works for them, so we have a number to call. I don't quite have the courage to make the call myself, but I think I'm going to ask the village to if they are willing to make that call.
Thanks, Ben. Seeing another question about what is the expected cost projection with respect to water increase charges?
Do you mean that what the village is projecting, how much rates will go up, or for the how much we project rates will go up under private control? Because I believe, Ben, you all have done really great projecting of costs in both scenarios. I would just like projecting out is very difficult, especially in this moment where there's a lot of regulatory costs coming down, particularly on the treatment side. So PFAS rules will be going into effect in 5 years. That will put up a lot of upward pressure on costs. And American Water has said that they need to update their treatment plants across the state. And that can be very expensive to remove PFAS and install the treatment to remove it. So I don't think that historical costs can be used to project out what future costs will be. American Water is also doing a very aggressive acquisition spree right now, and we anticipate because of those PFAS regulations, it'll only kick up more. It's New Jersey was hit really hard by PFAS because of the industry in the state, and so the company is already touting itself as a PFAS solution provider, even though it still needs to update its own treatment systems to comply with the upcoming regulations. But we anticipate that there will be even more acquisitions down the line. Again, that's a lot of upward pressure on the company's rates that might be out of line with what we've seen historically.
We might ask Tanya if that does that answer the question you asked, or do you need to clarify the question a little?
So hi, yeah. So my concern is I'm thankful for the presentation. Sorry, I can't put my camera on because I can't seem to switch it back to me. But the thing is, what I'm always worried about is this going to be like a situation that my parents had like in Florida, where they're spending all this money on water.
One thing I can say that if the system is sold, I think you will find your rates go to Americans rate zone A1, and whatever rate increases come along to that, you'll be seeing in the future. And I can say that they will be fairly substantial. If you look at Americans' investor presentations, they are projecting very aggressive earnings growth, and that's all paid for by ratepayers. Well, one way or another, your rates are going to go up to pay for that. Plus, they do have costs going up also. So, yeah, rates will go up, and they will go up faster in privatized systems.
My best guess, having looked at this, is that yeah, rates are going up either way because their mayor negotiated hard with New Jersey American Water and got this deal for the early years. For the first little while, like right now, Maplewood pays 20% more than us, typical customer, just literally comparing my bill with my Maplewood neighbor's friend's bill. But we're going to go up if we don't sell, because we're going to have to hire some people and do some capital investment. It's all, as discussed. But the long and short of it is that for the first little while with that contract, that deal that the mayor negotiated, rates will go up less with if we sell for 5 years, 10 years, maybe 13 years is my best guess. After that, it's going to cost more to stay private. If we keep the system, we have more control. The actual costs, the costs of other New Jersey American customers are going up really fast. I figure 6.8% a year. The village says it's more like 3 or 4, but it's 6.8% a year. And we had a meeting with New Jersey American Water, and they showed us numbers. They agreed with my estimates. Okay, so they're not disputing it. The only question is the village going to go up more than that? Well, the village says it's going to go up. It's been going up 5% a year. Can't argue with that. It's going to go up 74% the next 5 years. So you have to do the math, figure out what that is, because we have to hire some people. But New Jersey American customers are going up faster for all the reasons that Mary and Bill have explained. The only difference is that we have this special deal for 5 years, and then it continues even for 10 years after that. But don't be fooled. After about 10 or 13 years, even before the 15-year deal is up, we come out behind. And 5 years after that, we're really getting screwed.
I have a question, Ben. We had a similar deal in Pennsylvania that the PUC, the Regulatory Commission, turned down. I'm questioning whether the appropriate regulatory authority in New Jersey will allow that. Do you have any knowledge about that?
No, it's a good question. I don't see why the BPU allows them for these teaser deals. I do know that the BPU doesn't like fast rate increases, so I can believe, and I do see in the history of tariffs of other towns that New Jersey American bought, they do have a special tariff for these other towns, and it slowly seems to merge in.
That's
But
right.
it's a good question.
That's right. The fact is that the rates almost have to stay flat when they purchase because they don't do a rate case every year.
Yeah.
The rate cases occur about it. Well, they used to occur about every 3 years, I believe, and now they tend to occur every 2 years. But that at any rate, they can't raise the rates outside of the rate case. So
Here's what's scary, though.
yeah,
Who's paying for that? All the other New Jersey American Water customers are
that's right.
paying for our special deal for 5 years, and they're going to keep buying new other towns, giving them special deals, and in 10 years, we're going to be paying for those special
That's
deals.
right. That's right. What I always say is, town A gets a good deal because it gets its capital work done. But then when they acquire town B, town A is paying for town B, and when they acquire town C, town A and B are paying for C, and so on and so on. And all of that gets rolled in. And Mary pointed out that the common tariff, if we go to that New Jersey, and New Jersey has let the private water companies have most of what they asked for in terms of statutory and regulatory changes. If they go to the common tariff, I think that's only going to get worse.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, some other questions. So we have a question about if we have any lawn signs. Unfortunately, we don't. We definitely don't have a large lobbying budget here, and definitely nowhere near as much as NJ American Water has. The reports came out last week, or the election spending reports came out last week, and they've spent over $1 million so far on lobbying for this referendum in New Jersey between South Orange and Gloucester Township down in South Jersey. Most of the money has been there. They've spent over 150,000 in South Orange, but I think about 925,000 in Gloucester Township on all kinds of advertising. So just another thing that they're spending money on.
Yeah, and Sam, I'm sorry. I always say that one of the problems with the referendum situation, it's very good to have a referendum, but there's definitely an asymmetry in the information that's getting to voters, which is why this is such a good thing to do. The people don't find out until after the thing is done. when there isn't a referendum. But in the case of a referendum, a lot of them that I've seen, there's a website that says say yes Bound Brook, or say yes Long Hill, or say yes Ridgewood, whatever town it is, and the talking points in favor are put up there, but there's no exploration of some of the other ideas that you have all heard here, and that's one of the problems I have with the way this is getting done.
Yeah, yeah. So unfortunately, we don't have lawn signs, but that's why we're yeah, asking folks to help us phone bank and spread the word to your friends and neighbors, because I think that's going to be a really critical way that we make sure that people know about this.
One of the things I see there
Yeah.
in the chat is Allison is asking, did the township is one option to get a new operator and still use American Water. I think that's in the task force report, that they sort of thought they listed some folks that they might consider, but they did not go out for bids. Allison, does that address your question?
Um, yeah, but I'm also wondering, I guess, if it doesn't go to American Water, how would all the upgrades and capital investment get done? Is that done by, like, it could go to the regional authorities and they would do it? I'm just trying to understand the different options
Well,
that the town did or did not explore.
Yeah,
if
so one of the options they did look at in the task report was, so there's currently a long-term contract with American Water for the actual water supply that's piped into the town, and currently that utility, which is like the piping system, and a couple tanks, is being operated by NJ American Water, and this is the what's ending in a few years when NJ American ends their operation business of systems that they don't own. So there is an opportunity to have another utility company, public or private, run the utility while the water continues to come from New Jersey American Water.
and if capital is required, I think it would be supplied by South Orange. They're the owners of the system.
Public borrowing is so much cheaper than using a company. So like what I was explaining earlier about how they finance projects, debt and equity, that's their model of financing a project. It's significantly more expensive than just going out on the municipal bond market for borrowing. South Orange has also been successful at getting state funds. So like their lead service line inventory is partially funded, including some forgiveness from the state. And the State Water Bank has more funding available. The bipartisan infrastructure law from 2021 was a large investment in water systems, particularly for lead service lines, a $15 billion investment in removing lead service lines. It's so funding's available to be sought, public funding, low cost funding, as well as some forgiveness too.
Thank you. Okay, so a question about if we know how Seton Hall figures into this. So that's something I don't think we have specific data on. For our panelists, Seton Hall is if you're not aware, Seton Hall is I think small to medium size university in South Orange. Um, so I know, Bill, that when you were sharing information about the users, that Seton Hall is definitely going to be an outlier in terms of water usage, and that might figure into why the average daily use of 9,000 or average monthly use of 9,000 gallons, which is significantly higher than an average household would ever use. It's being factored in here. I don't know if anyone else has thoughts on Seton Hall and how they figure into this.
I haven't done the calculation about how they'll be impacted. Their rates will likely go up, but as Bill showed before, the cost, we haven't looked at commercial properties and how what the difference would be between public and private. We know that for particularly for small water users, the cost difference is much greater. So private ownership is much more expensive for smaller water users. So, I mean, but that's one of those considerations when you have local control is like, how do you allocate cost even? And what is the most equitable way to fund a water system? Should these big users be paying more instead of getting subsidies by the smaller users, lower income households? That's one of the benefits of having local control is that you can set your rate design so that you can prioritize how costs are allocated and make it more equitable. I also do want to follow up on something I said before. I don't think I was really clear, but like right now, South Orange is already funding its capital improvements itself to its distribution system. I don't know if that was clear before with what I said. They got a grant and state funding. But so right now, under the current scenario, American Water is operating the system, but South Orange itself is financing infrastructure improvements. So right now, the current status quo is that South Orange is responsible for capital improvements and financing those improvements to the distribution system. And that would remain the same if you reject the sale. If you don't reject the sale, if you approve it, American Water would be responsible for that. But then again, the cost of financing is significantly higher under private control. So I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that right now, the current scenario is that South Orange is responsible for making those financial investments. So like as Bill said, South Orange would do it like they're doing right now.
And then the other factor is that the capital costs of other systems will also be borne by the ratepayers in South Orange. They are currently paying for their own capital improvements, but once they become owned by New Jersey American, their rates are including capital work as systems all over the state.
Being another question from Ben. NJ American Water says ratepayers aren't paying for the propaganda campaign. Is that really true?
Well, I attempted to answer it in the chat too, that you know, they're allowed to recover some costs and not others. And part of the BPU process after the if the transaction goes as far as needing to go to the BPU for review, they'll look at costs that will be permitted to be put into rate base and costs that won't be. But even so, I think the some of the figures that you mentioned, Sam, the costs of these campaigns, even if they're not in rate base, it just gives you a good idea of how asymmetrical the campaigns are. You know, they're very much able to tell their story using all those resources.
Yeah, and some of those things, some of those costs are in South Orange. I know there's been mailers, there's a website, there's
Yeah.
Facebook ads, Instagram ads, in Gloucester Township where where the sewer is up for sale on the ballot. They've spent money on flying airplanes over the township with banners behind them telling people to vote yes and running ads on Monday Night Football during the Eagles game. So a big, really big spending here between
Yeah.
between the two. Um,
And I will just flag that I did see that in the latest rate case. So the company goes into a rate case at the BPU. They have to submit information. So they were projecting $3.2 million in acquisition expenses for this year that they would recover from rates. So I don't know if that's the propaganda, if that's the consultants or the transaction fees, the lawyers, but that is included in their rate filing for this year, that it will be recovered from rates.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at their budget for replacing lead service lines, and it included, I think, $900,000 in communications costs, and that was going into the rate base.
Well, okay, but in fairness, sometimes lead service line replacement programs, there has to be a lot of public education so that people understand what's happening and why lead is, so I have to say that, that isn't necessarily an unnecessary expense, or at least some of it is probably not unnecessary.
You're right. I
I
mean, everything
Yeah.
they do seems reasonable, but it all adds up very fast.
Oh, of course. No, of course. And then, you're paying for if you get the lead service line surcharge as a customer. In fact, I was talking to somebody today. She said, I'm a New Jersey American customer. I'm in a place that doesn't have lead service line, but I have a lead service line surcharge on my bill because that's the way it works.
yeah. I think the person whose name TR-SHS
Yeah,
has a question.
yeah, I'd like to ask something. So I'm listening. It's definitely like I got two different letters and two cardboard fancy kind of mailers from you know the town that supports the voting yes. And I'm listening tonight, and I guess it's making sense to me that the privatization is problematic, but all of you who are talking know so much about this. I don't know how I could ever really explain this to anyone else. So, in terms of advocacy or trying to organize, I just don't. I guess I'm wondering how does this like message get delivered so that people can like make an informed decision? There's only a few of us on this call, right? I mean, in the Zoom call, it's very small. Um, and I mean, again, all that you're talking about, I maybe understood half of it. I mean, true, I'm just being honest. Like, it sounds very compelling and it makes sense that it shouldn't be a business, you
That
know.
that's exactly that's the problem. That's exactly the problem. And there's an information vacuum, and there's a language barrier. I mean, there's this whole set of language that the utility world has. I was reading a report done by I think it's called the Center for Policy Integrity at NYU, and they talk about something called procedural justice, and that utilities commissions, even though they're public bodies, American will say our rates are regulated by the Utilities Commission, by the BPU, but those proceedings are extremely complex, and to participate, you have to be granted intervener status, and there's all this complexity to it. It's very hard for the public to really be a watchdog for its own interests in those kinds of proceedings. There is an agency called the Rate Council that is supposed to defend the interests of ratepayers, and they're very good and they work very hard. They do not have enough resources. There are electric utilities and gas utilities and water utilities in the state, and they have very small staff. But that's their job, is to try to look out for ratepayers, because they had to create this role because of the disadvantage the public would be at in these forums. So I definitely understand what you're saying, and I guess one of the things I would say would be key words are it's going to cost more. It's going to and we're going to lose control of a very, very important asset. I mean, those are the two. I don't know, Mary or Bill or anyone else, if you would agree that those are two big simple ideas to get across.
And I guess I would just follow with like what is the motivation of, I guess, Sheena column and folks who are trying to push this. Like, I know New Jersey American Water's motivation clearly profit, but what is the motivation of our village to, or the village politicians to for us to vote yes? Like why? I mean, they're residents too. Why are they?
She's explained some of her reasons. Sometimes the municipal government and the people of the town are not actually totally aligned. They're not the same. They're not on the same side. So she wants to get this off her books, I think. She doesn't like that. She's fiscally quite conservative, which is admirable. But water is a really fundamental thing. It's one thing to borrow for a performing arts center. I mean, I liked it, but I can see why people in a small town wouldn't go for that. But water is important, and borrowing, as Bill said earlier today, is appropriate to fund that. She doesn't want it on her books. She's very protect. It will erase debt as well. It will also create property taxes for the town. But New Jersey Americans are going to recover those property taxes, and who are they going to recover it from? From us. So it's almost
right.
like a backdoor
That's right.
tax increase. It looks great on the town's books, but it's not so great for the ratepayers.
So what they're really doing, Ben, is they're really shifting they're shifting the responsibility, and not just in a managerial sense, but in the debt sense. When the town debt is being paid off, yes, but the debt is really being transferred to the ratepayers. So,
She also has another argument which is interesting. I don't buy it, but maybe some people do. She says, look how we got here. Voters put pressure on governments to not raise the rates, and we underinvested. And now we have a problem. Our pipes are rusty, and we need treatment plants, and we don't have the staff. South Orange is a little volunteer town. She works 28 hours a day. She doesn't get paid anything. We've got a small staff. We really do need to hire a couple people to run this thing. Right now, Mr. Levinson is doing a great job. He's drawing half a salary. He shouldn't be sacrificing like that. But we can do this. We can hire a couple people. As Peg said, competent. This is a well-known, Bill said it's a well-known business. You can hire these people. You turn the crank, you do it. Every town in the country does this. And water rates will have to go up a little bit to pay for it, but less than they would in the long term than if we. But so her argument was she doesn't trust the future governments to stick to their guns and keep the rates what they need to be to pay for the system. Whereas if we sell, we lose the power to make that choice that's been made forever, and so we'll get a great system. We'll just have to pay through the nose for it.
I'll make a couple of comments here. You describe a serious problem with privatization, getting people interested in their local politics. That is just not on very many people's radar. And I don't know how you overcome that, but we've seen this again and again. One of the things that the playbook I didn't talk about is the free money that Big Water promotes to local municipalities. That really doesn't apply in South Orange's situation, that they're going to take the money, erase some debt, which is nice, but South Orange is not going to go out and build new libraries and plant trees and stuff with that kind of thing with the money. Most municipalities are seduced by the amount of money that Big Water is going to pay them for their system. In New Garden, they were offered 6 times their normal tax revenue. And boy, they thought that was wonderful. When the rate increases came through, the township supervisors endured intense blowback on their decision to sell the system. In one case, I was at a township council meeting where a reporter asked the one remaining supervisor who was part of the sale, if you had that to do again today, would you do it? And the guy, well, I won't, you mean, he was squirming in his seat. And the township solicitor piped up and says, I'm going to recommend to him that he not answer that question. You should have seen the look of relief on that guy's face. He didn't want to address that. But South Orange is different in this respect. Uh, it, I think it's been pretty well articulated here tonight. It's a matter of local control, and you know, who has control of the situation? Water and sewer service is not free. Water and sewer service should not be subsidizing local taxes. Local taxes should not be subsidizing water and sewer service. Uh, it's just the way it is. And your services ought to be competently run. So, okay. And is privatization the best way to do that? That's a decision that people need to make. You know, we do what we can to educate them, and you have to accept the answer.
Thank you. And one thing I'll add too, just in terms of this specific election and talking to your neighbors about this issue, I will share out with everyone who was here this evening our fact sheet, which breaks down in sort of on a front and back what the issue is with privatization as something you can share and crib from in conversations. And then, as Ben shared in the chat, Soma Action also put together a voter guide that sort of breaks down the pros and cons of both, kind of comparing selling and not selling.
And I'll just say that hundreds of communities have rejected water privatization. Nationally, what we've seen is that it's a winning argument. People get it. Water should not be in private hands. Control of water should be held in the public space, that this is a basic fundamental public good and public service. So I think that nationally what we've seen is that people overwhelmingly reject privatization. That's why the companies are concentrating on certain states where they have these relationships. They can have like the mayor, the council, send out a letter to everyone endorsing this and trying to convince voters to vote for it. They've built up those relationships, the corporations. It's part of their agenda, and we've seen it. But nationally, water privatization is not a winning issue. People reject it resoundingly over and over again. Hundreds of communities, even in New Jersey, have rejected water privatization on the ballot by pressuring their city council to reject it, by turning out and showing out. So we have, like Sam said, materials and talking points for folks to take back to your neighbors. We have a flyer you can take back to your neighbors, just like high level talking points, like what's at issue, what's the issue, and why should you vote no, to protect your water supply, to protect local control, to control what the cost will be down the line. And basically just to give yourself a choice. To protect that choice, because water is, I mean, this is wonky, I know. It's probably not helpful for me to say, but water is a natural monopoly. You only have one set of pipes going into your house. It's so different than other customer items or consumer goods. It's not a widget, or it's not even a food product that you have options at the store. You have one set of pipes going into your home. So there's no choice unless you have that ballot box accountability over the people who make those big decisions. That's your choice, and that's the only way you can weigh in. Like Peg was talking about earlier, the BPU, the Board of Public Utilities, it's a complex process. Most people can't weigh in. Unless you're a lawyer, you can't have a say. It's hard to, and when they have hearings, it'll be in other towns. You'll have to drive often hours. They'll stagger them across the state, but it's not accessible to weigh in. And even then, those commissioners, they're appointed officials. They're a revolving door between the companies and the people who are overseeing the companies. So a lot of the lawyers for the companies will then go work for the BPU. So we have a revolving door issue, a lack of neutrality. It's not a solution for that ballot box accountability that you have with local control, that you have when your local government makes the big decisions about your water.
Two funny stories about that. So the mayor of Gloucester, I think, works at New Jersey American Water, right? He's recused himself, but pretty fishy. And then the BPU offices are in Trenton. Now, Trenton was in 2010, New Jersey American Water spent $10 million on the propaganda campaign to not sell to New Jersey American Water. 80% of voters in Trenton voted no, and Trenton's water system is still in public hands.
One other comment, building on what Mary said, Aqua and American are both extremely competent at navigating regulatory mazes and lobbying legislators and government. They are professionals at that. Yeah. We are no match for them in any way.
Right.
We're just not.
I mean, one thought that I had was the easiest way to describe why private water companies are ultimately going to cost, or why water is ultimately going to cost more under privatization is, if you look at all other businesses, the incentive for corporations is to come up with the cheapest way to deliver a product or service. When you have a company like American Water, it's the exact opposite. They profit by spending more. So, it's just it's such a perverse incentive when the way that a corporation makes money is not by innovating, cutting costs, finding a way to deliver the best product at the lowest price. It's, hey, we can make a guaranteed rate of return on every dollar we spend, and the ratepayers are going to pay for it.
Yeah, if you're a capitalist, this is not a good setup. I mean, there's no capitalism here. There's no competition for our bid. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, and so some of the regulations and laws they've gotten changed basically have diminished either the role or the power of the BPU to do the kind of regulation and analysis. One of the reasons they love surcharges, they call them clauses. They get to bypass a lot of the steps that are involved in a rate case, and they can obviously keep their cash flow going, and that's the name of the game. And they do not have the accountability with the surcharges that they have with the rate case. So, the playing field has been tilted.
Even more. No, but like Sam has flyers that I think you can share, right, with folks?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
High level talking points, and there's like a call script that we can probably share around too, just like how to talk to people about it. Because you're right, like at the end of the day, like no one wants to know about the BPU processes, the surcharges, or like a natural monopoly. It's just what it's about is that local control, and what we've seen is local control, democratic decision making are the points that resonate best with people. Because that's what the point is at the end of the day. It's about having that local control over your water, something essential for life and public well-being.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mary. And it feels like a good point to end on. I know we are well past the hour. If there are any other questions, I'm going to put my email in the chat, and I'll make sure that presenters get looped in so we can get you an answer. But yeah, I want to thank everyone for spending your evening with us and digging deep into this issue, because it's so important that we give residents the chance to maintain control over this issue. So hopefully, I'll see some of you at our phone banks, or you sign up to volunteer, and we'll be in touch. Yeah, so we can work together to make sure that the system remains in public control.
Oh, that's a great point in the chat too. One thing, actually, I know we're ending, but one thing I hear a lot from folks is that having to call that 1-800 number is such a drag.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody who's participated.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you
Appreciate
all.
the
Thank you.
time, everyone. Thank you.
Everyone.
Everyone.
Great night.
Night.